This video was brought to you by our old friends Squarespace. If you're looking to create a website, portfolio, blog, or online store, Squarespace gives you all the tools you need from start to finish. And I should know because I used Squarespace to build my production company's website, galaxyclasspictures.com. I didn't know the first thing about coding, but I didn't need to. I simply selected a template from Squarespace's vast array of options and then customized it to fit my needs. If you're looking to create an online store, Squarespace gives you everything you need to start selling products within minutes. And with integrated SEO tools, you can ensure your site will reach more people more often, so your site can grow the way you want. Jump over to Squarespace using the link below to start building your site, and use the coupon code Rowan J. Coleman to get 10% off your first purchase. In 1982, Steven Spielberg had wowed the world with E.T. the Extraterrestrial. The family-friendly adventure had taken the world by storm, becoming the highest-grossing movie of all time, and solidified Spielberg's image as the master of whimsy. But over the following decade, Spielberg's repertoire would change. While he still wowed audiences with Jurassic Park, his passions shifted to hard-hitting historical dramas like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. His darker tendencies and sentimental sensibilities would eventually collide at the turn of the millennium in AI, artificial intelligence. Stanley Kubrick originated the idea of AI in the late 1970s, as an adaptation of the short story Super Toys Last All Summer by Brian Aldiss. Kubrick worked on the project on and off for many years, initially hiring Aldiss himself to write the screenplay, but he left the project over creative differences with Kubrick, and the film languished in development hell, going through several more screenwriters. One of the reasons the development took so long was Kubrick's idea to use an animatronic child puppet to play the protagonist David, rather than an actor. Throughout the 80s, Kubrick made numerous calls to Dennis Muren at ILM to consult him on emerging visual effects technologies. When animatronics proved to be insufficient for the concept, Kubrick looked into creating David as a CG character, but again, the technology was not advanced enough. In 1985, Kubrick asked Steven Spielberg to direct the film while he would serve as producer. At the time, few people knew that Kubrick and Spielberg were friends, the two having met in the late 70s while Spielberg was scouting for Raiders of the Lost Ark and Kubrick was filming The Shining. Since then, the two kept in touch through phone calls and faxed letters. The two filmmakers were often viewed as opposites. Kubrick was the pragmatic intellectual, while Spielberg was the commercially minded entertainer. To some degree, the two friends shared this view, seeing in each other traits and skills they believed they lacked in themselves. Producer John Harlan recalled, "Stanley showed Steven 650 drawings which he had, and the script and the story, everything. Stanley said, 'Look, why don't you direct it and I'll produce it?' Steven was almost in shock. But Spielberg was too preoccupied with other projects, telling Kubrick he should be the one to direct. By the late 90s, following the production of Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick died of a heart attack at age 70. Following Kubrick's death, Harlan, armed with all the material the project had accumulated up to that point, once again approached Spielberg to direct the film. As a tribute to his late friend, Spielberg finally agreed. By the late 90s, visual effects technology was still nowhere close to rendering a lifelike human being, and so Spielberg decided to search for an actor to play the lead role, David. However, Spielberg knew from the start the only person for the job was Haley Joel Osment. The 12-year-old actor already had an impressive resume when he was asked to play the lead in AI. Osment had worked with Spielberg's friend Robert Zemeckis, playing opposite Tom Hanks as Forrest Gump's son, Forrest Gump, in the film Forrest Gump. But Osment achieved true stardom when he acted in M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. Osment was intrigued by the project and wanted to work with Steven Spielberg, so he happily accepted the role. To appear more robotic in the film, Osment chose to walk with perfect posture at all times and never blinked while he was on camera. The character Gigolo Joe was originally conceived as a mecha GI, but was changed to a gigolo by screenwriter Ian Watson. Kubrick remarked on the change, "I guess we lost the kiddie market." Jude Law landed the role. The actor had recently received an Academy Award nomination for his performance in The Talented Mr. Ripley. To prepare for the role, Law worked with choreographer Francesca Janes to emulate the movements of Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. Law had to use a small handheld fan to keep cool at all times, otherwise he risked sweating through his heavy makeup. Julianne Moore and Gwyneth Paltrow were both considered for the role of David's adopted mother Monica Swinton before Frances O'Connor was cast. Veteran stage and screen actor Sam Robards was cast as Monica's husband Henry. Playing the Swintons' son Martin was Jake Thomas. Acclaimed actor William Hurt was cast as David's creator, Professor Alan Hobby, and Brendan Gleeson was cast as the Flesh Fair leader Johnson Johnson. Appearing in voice roles were Robin Williams as Dr. No, Jack Angel as Teddy, Meryl Streep as the Blue Fairy, Chris Rock as Comedian Robot, and Ben Kingsley as the Specialist. In a departure from Spielberg's usual filming style, AI was shot almost entirely on sound stages in Burbank, California. The only location filming took place in Oregon for the forest and flesh fair sequences. Exteriors like Rouge City were built as large sets with blue screen extensions. Spielberg also adopted Kubrick's secretive approach to filming by not giving the cast and crew the complete script, making the actors sign a confidentiality agreement, and banning the press from the set. To create the robots, the production hired Stan Winston's team and Industrial Light and Magic. In a clever approach, the physical animatronic puppets created by Stan Winston's team were used for the older, less human-looking robot models, while digital effects and live actors were used for the newer human-looking models. Like most of Stan Winston's work, the puppets are terrific, especially Teddy. Teddy was a combination of a full animatronic and a rod puppet. In post-production, ILM removed the rods to give the illusion of Teddy standing and walking by himself. ILM also created a fully digital double of Teddy for more elaborate running, jumping, and climbing actions. The handoff between the physical puppets and CG double is pretty seamless. You wouldn't notice the difference unless you were looking for it. ILM's work augmenting the robot actors also holds up extremely well. The tracking and rendering of the CG elements are flawless, especially for the nanny robot David encounters. There's a great reveal of the effect when she first turns her head, and all the other shots are totally believable. ILM's environment work on Rouge City and the flooded Manhattan is also stellar. The Coney Island sequence used several miniatures, which were flooded with fog to give the illusion of being underwater. The digital environment work and digital augmentations to the miniatures are so good that it's difficult to tell at times what was a model and what was computer generated. Once again, Spielberg teamed up with composer John Williams for the film's score. Unlike his previous work with Spielberg, Williams' score for AI was far more eclectic, deliberately lacking a central adventurous theme. Instead, the score runs the gamut of discordant strings, sentimental piano, and, in a very rare turn for Williams, postmodern electronica. While less iconic than Williams' other work, AI's score is still a great listen. The synth work is very subtle, with most of the mood and texture coming from the strings and brass. It's an understated score, but no less moving. The track over the end credits, Where Dreams Are Born, sung by Barbara Bonney, is easily my favourite track. After decades in development, AI, Artificial Intelligence, was finally released on the 29th of June, 2001. If you're enjoying this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, or if you want to support my work more directly, I'm also on Patreon. Like many of Spielberg's films, I have memories of watching AI as a child, and like many who saw the film at that age, AI Artificial Intelligence deeply disturbed me. Leading up to the rewatch for this video, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but by the time the credits rolled, I finally understood it on a level I never thought possible. The central question at the heart of AI is, can a machine love and be loved in return? This question is posed directly to the audience in its opening scene, and like the rest of the film, it constantly surprises and disturbs as it unfolds. At first we see the outline of a human figure, which is revealed to be a statue. A man alone becomes a man in a crowded room. A sudden act of violence becomes a test for a machine. Though the scene is Kubrickian in its discussion of philosophical ideas, Spielberg's intricate blocking and compositions guide us through that discussion. The layers continue peeling away as, at first, William Hurt's Professor Hobby appears to be the one stating the film's thesis, But in actuality, it's this unnamed character.
If a robot could genuinely love a person, what responsibility does that person hold toward that mecha in return? It's a moral question, isn't it?
The oldest one of all. But in the beginning, didn't God create Adam to love him?
The opening act of the film, as David is introduced to the Swinton family, continues raising more questions. Though David is our protagonist, there's no denying how creepy and uncanny he comes across in his first few scenes. His pre-programmed understanding of love is extremely narrow, often coming across as needy and doting rather than proper affection. The audience is never allowed to forget that David is artificial. Even when it appears Monica is warming up to David and imprints on him, we are forced to ask why. After all, Monica is struggling with the potential loss of her only child. Building on Professor Hobby's question from the prologue, does Monica really love David, or does she simply need David to love her? Despite all the turmoil she feels, deep down is David simply another appliance to her, a toy to make her feel better. This sense of the uncanny is woven into the cinematography as well. At first glance, Janusz Kaminski's lighting is there to create a warm, cozy atmosphere, but at times it's too warm. There's so much orange and such heavy backlight that it's as if the cinematography is compensating for something. We are presented with the color palette of a cherished memory, but the action is often strange and disturbing.
It's okay, Mommy. It doesn't hurt.
The emotions of the sequence are never allowed to settle. Just when we feel at ease with the family dynamic, there's something to shock us out of our comfort. This is a rhythm which reflects the relationship between David and Monica. There's such a yearning for something heartwarming and safe, but it never comes. David's artificial nature is always obvious, and Monica's love for him never fully crystallizes, only a sense of desperation. All of these mixed emotions climax in the gut-wrenching scene where Monica abandons David in the forest. The performances from both actors here are nothing less than extraordinary.
No, Mommy, please, no. I'm sorry I broke myself. I'm so sorry I cut your hair off. And I'm sorry I hurt you.
No,
Mark, and
I have to
Henry.
go. I have to go. Stop it!
Sorry.
The second act transitions us into a dark fairy tale as David journeys in search of the blue fairy to make him real. But once again, the sequence is rich in juxtaposition. Despite the references to Pinocchio and other children's stories, this fairy tale is strewn with adult material. The Jiminy Cricket to David's Pinocchio, after all, is the male prostitute Gigolo Joe, and the colourful Land of Toys equivalent is essentially a red light district. Gigolo Joe himself is quite ambiguous, as we're forced to ask why he's helping David in the first place. It could simply be self-preservation, or him following his core programming.
Is Blue Fairy mecha, augur, man or woman?
Woman.
Woman. I know women.
But after the two visit Dr. No, voiced by the incomparable Robin Williams, Joe does seem to care for David on some level, warning him of potential dangers.
We are suffering for the mistakes they made because when the end comes, all that will be left is us. That's why they hate us. And that's why you must stay here. With me.
And later rescuing him from the water.
When you become a real boy, remember me to the ladies when you grow up.
By the time David and Joe reach Manhattan, what should provide David with all of his answers instead leads to existential horror.
Is this the place they make you real?
This is the place they make you read.
Despite Professor Hobby's impression of a keeper of wisdom and knowledge, he is revealed as another damaged human.
I thought I was one of a kind.
My son was one of a kind.
Despite his ambitions, Hobby is only interested in David as a machine, and his groundbreaking development only as it pertains to product. Yet despite this apparent dead end, David still dreams of his wish being granted. Considering how ambiguous the film is, some would see this moment as the most fitting end to the movie.
He prayed as the ocean froze and the ice encased the caged amphibicopter and the blue fairy too, locking them together where he could still make her out. Always there. Always smiling.
But the movie has more to say.
Thus, 2,000 years passed by.
To certain viewers, this time jump is where AI jumps the tracks, in an ending many assumed was tacked on by Spielberg. It is in fact lifted straight from Stanley Kubrick. I think part of the confusion over the meaning of the sequence stems from many viewers mistaking the future beings for aliens, when in fact they are hyper-advanced robots. With this clarification in hand, the ending no longer feels tacked on at all, but is in fact an important resolution to the story's philosophical exploration. Once again, there is much that is left ambiguous. The method the future beings use to resurrect David's mother is left vague, and could lead one to assume Monica is a clone. But based on what the specialist tells David,
We found the very fabric of space-time itself appeared to store information about every event which had ever occurred in the past.
my interpretation is that these future beings have transported Monica into the future from her original time. The reason no human can remain in the future is because they have to go back to avoid any temporal paradoxes. Those like Monica who are resurrected only remember their brief trip to the future as a dream. This would explain why Monica never questions where her husband or child is, and how she is here with David. Despite how warm and classically Spielbergian this ending feels, if she's having this dream after she's abandoned David, then this could be a sign of her intense guilt and regret. Awakening to find the boy she abandoned, the first thing she does is give him the love she never truly showed him in life.
I do love you. I have always loved you.
It's heartbreaking rather than heartwarming. After 2 millennia, this robot boy who just wants to be loved finally gets his wish, and yet we're constantly reminded that this has all been concocted by the future kind. We're once again left asking, is this real? The movie definitively states that David has grown beyond his programming.
You found a fairy tale, and inspired by love, fueled by desire, you set out on a journey to make her real, and most remarkable of all, no one taught you how. We actually lost you for a while. We're to the greatest single human gift, the ability to chase down our dreams. And that is something no machine has ever done until you.
We know a machine is capable of love, but can he be loved in return? If this is merely a dream to Monica, or if David was only ever a coping mechanism to her, literally, then surely this is a downbeat ending, right? Beneath the Spielbergian warmth, we find Kubrick's coldness. But I choose to see it in a different way. Returning to the question, can a machine love and be loved in return, the movie definitively answers yes to this question, but not in the way we might expect. Because David does love, and he is loved in return, by the other robots. It's worth noting that throughout the movie, the robots never fight back against humans. They try to save themselves, but they never intentionally harm anyone. Humanity falls in AI, not because of any war against the robots, but because of its own weakness. Global warming changed the climate, creating the need for robot labor in the first place. And when these machines became conscious and capable of love, they were simply packaged and sold as yet another product. Robots in this story are not simply stronger and more durable than humans, they are more empathetic. We see this in the epilogue as the machines share each other's consciousness. The future kind help David out of scientific curiosity, certainly, but resurrecting his mother is something they do out of love.
You are so important to us, David. You are unique in all the world.
Give him what he wants.
The film may subvert the fairy tale tropes, but only to deliver another fable. Perhaps if the humans in this story loved each other the way robots do, they wouldn't have wiped themselves out. And yet, the film is not cynical or sanctimonious in its messaging. AI isn't demanding humanity be better, it is pleading for humanity to be true to itself, to remember how to be kind, compassionate, and loving. AI is not a condemnation of human nature, but a celebration of it. It's easy to see why I felt so disturbed by it as a child, and why audiences and critics were so divided on it at the time, but looking at it now, I can't see it as anything other than a genuine masterpiece. Far from Kubrick and Spielberg's sensibilities clashing, they complement each other beautifully. There's still an open question by the end, this time directed at the audience. The film seems to ask us if we believe the love between machines is as real as the love between human beings. It seems to be asking us if we believe in love at all. For me, the answer is yes. In the lead up to AI's release, Spielberg chose to extend Kubrick's trademark secrecy to the film's marketing, keeping the plot and story tightly under wraps. Unfortunately, this backfired. While not an outright flop, AI didn't come close to matching the status of Steven Spielberg's other hits, grossing $235 million against its $95 million budget. Critical and audience reception was mixed, with many reviews highlighting the different sensibilities of Kubrick and Spielberg. A common thread emerged among the film's detractors, however, that Spielberg's commercial sentimentality had somehow degraded Kubrick's intellectual ideas. However, according to many who worked on the film, this assumption was completely backwards. Spielberg later reflected on the film's reception, saying, "People pretend to think they know Stanley Kubrick, and they think they know me, when most of them don't know either of us. And what's really funny about that is, all the parts of AI that people assume were Stanley's were mine, and all the parts of AI that people accuse me of sweetening and softening and sentimentalizing were all Stanley's. The teddy bear was Stanley's. The whole last 20 minutes of the movie was completely Stanley's. The whole first 35-40 minutes of the film, all the stuff in the house, was word for word from Stanley's screenplay. This was Stanley's vision. 80% of the critics got it all mixed up. But I could see why, because obviously I've done a lot of movies where people have cried and have been sentimental, and I've been accused of sentimentalizing hardcore material. But in fact, it was Stanley who did the sweetest parts of AI, not me. I'm the guy who did the dark center of the movie with the flesh fair and everything else. That's why he wanted me to make the movie in the first place. He said, "This is much closer to your sensibilities than my own." While AI is by no means a beloved classic in modern pop culture, in fact I'd say it's largely been forgotten, modern reappraisals of the film have been more positive rather than mixed. Divorced from the context of its original release, more critics, enthusiasts, and viewers have come to recognize the film's strengths. It's easy to see why the initial reception was so divided. Viewers who expected another crowd-pleasing Spielberg blockbuster were shocked by the darkness, and those who expected a Kubrickian philosophical exploration were taken off guard by the fairy tale overtones. But if you haven't seen AI in a while, and you remember not gelling with it when you did, I'd recommend re-watching the movie with fresh eyes. You may be surprised by what you see. AI may have been built on the tension between warmth and darkness, but for Spielberg's next film, he would fully shift into the realm of noir. Thank you for watching. Leave the video a like, and if you want to stay up to date on future uploads, hit the subscribe button and bell icon. You can also see videos early, uncut, and ad-free by joining me on Patreon. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank all of my patrons and members with an ultra thanks to Eamon Kelly, Michael Hardy, Ian Hodge, County Ark, Mike Halsey, Retro PC Gamer, Benjamin Stokes, Hiroshi the Dog, Movie Magic, Charles Borsam, Olivia Computer, Bano, Extreme Streamers, Tom, Dusk, Colin Camille, Patrick Fleming, Matthew Camille, Edmark Starr, Dylan Thomas, Lilac Yene, Howard Craig Kervik, and Caging G. Thank you once again for watching, and until next time, have a good one.